so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So can you just begin by telling us exactly what the fracking process is, especially from a geologic standpoint?
Sure. So I think the important thing to understand about fracking is that name, hydraulic fracturing, right? Fracking that comes from hydraulic fracturing is actually one part of a two-step process that has been technologically advanced in the last decade, 15 years. So the fracking is injecting high-pressure fluids, which is mostly water, and then also chemicals that help the water flow, help decontaminate material inside the well, and particles of sand to hold the fractures open once they're created. So the fracking fluids put down the well at high pressure, and then it breaks the rock, which will liberate gas that can flow back to the well. So that's what fracking is. Fracking has been around for 50 or more years. It's been commonly used. The recent advance has been when you combine fracking with horizontal drilling, and so most geologic units, most strata, as they're called, beds of that contain oil or natural gas, are horizontal, and yet our wells are vertical, and so there's a problem because you go down the well and the units are like so, and so recent drilling techniques have allowed operators to go down vertically for a while and then turn and go along the geologic units. And so when you can do that and then hydraulically fracture those units, you can liberate an awful lot of oil or natural gas from what had previously been what a geologist would call a tight unit, or something that has low permeability. It doesn't flow very easily. So that's what the process is.
Mm-hmm. What are the main environmental concerns from your perspective?
Yeah, so there are several concerns associated with water quality. So we're pumping toxins into the ground, and not all of them come back up with the gas. So some of them remain in the ground. I believe that estimates say 50% in some cases. So that's one concern, is that there's literally pumping toxins to the ground, and the casings, or the outside of the well is protected, so that you make sure that what's in the well doesn't get into the geologic units. But they can crack, or they can break, or sometimes they're inadequately installed, so some of those toxic fluids can get into the groundwater. Also, we don't really know, and this is my biggest concern, we don't really know where other fractures are in the earth, either naturally occurring fractures or even abandoned wells from oil or gas exploration 30, 40, 100 years ago. And so there might be other pathways that when we pump the fluids down, they find cracks that we hadn't anticipated and then flow back up to the surface that way. So the two direct sources of contamination is either because of basically bad wells or inadvertent fractures. On top of that, it requires a lot of water, millions of gallons of water to do this process. So that has to come from somewhere, and so this puts pressure on the freshwater supply. And then finally, the wastewater has to be stored somewhere or processed somewhere. And right now we don't really have adequate places to do that because, again, these have toxic chemicals in it. So those are sort of the most direct issues with water quality. One other concern is the gas being generated is methane. Now, methane has an environmental benefit because when you burn methane, it has a lower impact on climate change. It's better than burning coal. When you burn methane, it's better than burning coal for lots of reasons. For climate change, for other contaminants, it's a better fuel. However, small amounts of gas might escape from the well without being burned, and when that happens, methane is much more potent than carbon dioxide, which is created when it burns, and so greater than 20%, or 20 times, not percent, 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So there's a significant potential problem for climate change associated with the natural gas extraction through fracking.
Thank you. Do you teach fracking or teach students about fracking in many of your classes? If so, what is the interest level from students and how knowledgeable do you find them to already be?
Excellent question. Yes, I do. I talk about hydraulic fracturing in, I believe, all of my classes. Sometimes it's addressed directly. So, for example, I'm teaching an environmental science seminar right now on energy. We discussed fracking in the Marcellus Shale, that's the Pennsylvania, New York region of the United States, extensively. I also usually mention it in my environmental geology or geochemistry or hydrogeology classes. And the reason I do is I think that this is a very, very important energy question of our time. Right now, there's been a massive explosion in the fracking industry. Tens of thousands of new wells, I believe, have been installed in the Pennsylvania, New York region in the last 5 or 10 years. And that has happened in part because of the argument that fracking occurs at a mile below the surface, and so therefore it's well away from the water supply, it's not a problem. But my concern is that we're basically running uncontrolled experiments deep inside the earth, and we don't really know what's happening. So on the one hand, there are benefits, economic and environmental benefits from getting natural gas. It's arguably a better fuel than either coal or gasoline. And then, of course, there's the benefit of having jobs and all of those kinds of key indicators. On the other hand, the contamination of water supply or the contribution to climate change is really problematic. And I just don't think that as a society we've considered these issues carefully enough to make smart choices about how to move forward. And of course, this distracts from better, more sustainable, truly sustainable, renewable energies like solar or wind energies.
Anything else that you'd like to add?
I think it's really important for people to know what the issues are. I do think that there are, as I said, there are economic benefits, and I think that those need to be weighed against the environmental concerns, and I think we need to have smart conversations from society. So thanks for doing the project.
Yay, thank you.